Welcome to The Explainer, where we're digging into what power really looks like in the 21st century. And, it's not just about who has the biggest army anymore. We're going to look at how controlling physical things, shaping a story, and good old-fashioned brute force all play out in our modern world.
So let's just dive right in with this question. It's a fascinating one, isn't it? Is hard power, the ships, the tanks, the missiles, is that still king? Or can you actually win a war without ever firing a shot? We're going to explore that through three very different real-world case studies that I think reveal the new rules of the game.
All right, first up, let's talk about the most concrete, tangible form of power there is, literally controlling the physical world. We're talking ports, pipelines, and the flow of energy that makes everything else run. So while all this chaos was breaking out in the region, Egypt was playing a very quiet, very smart game. They saw the instability coming and made a decisive move to become the one country you couldn't do without, the essential energy hub. They completely outmaneuvered their rivals, including an Israeli plan for a new oil route that, just looked too risky and unstable for global partners to bet on. Now let's zoom in on this number for a second. 29 million. That is the number of barrels of surplus oil storage capacity Egypt has at its main ports. This isn't an accident. This massive capacity is a strategic play that has basically turned the country into a giant magnet for global energy traders who are all looking for a safe place to park their assets. And this is where you can really see their grand strategy. It is not just about oil. Egypt is playing the long game. They're developing ports, sure, but they're also locking in a huge natural gas deal with Cyprus. They're partnering with the UAE to create a central fuel bank, and they're even jumping into the nuclear game with the El Dabaa power plant. It is a full-spectrum plan to completely dominate the regional energy map.
And that's the key right there. This isn't some wishy-washy, far-off dream. It's a top-down, urgent national mission with a very hard deadline. That kind of focus has put Egypt in the perfect position to be seen as the safest, most reliable bet for global oil trade, especially at a time when all the old, traditional routes are looking pretty shaky. Okay, so let's shift gears. We're moving from our first case study, which was all about the physical world, to our next one. We're going from the battle over pipelines and territory to a much more slippery fight, the battle for ideas, for minds, and for the very meaning of words.
So over in the United Kingdom, a huge political war was fought. But not with tanks or guns. It was fought with words. Specifically, it was a battle over the meaning of these two terms. And the political fallout? Well, it was absolutely devastating for the Labour Party and its leader at the time, Jeremy Corbyn. So the heart of this whole conflict was a massive campaign to get organizations all over the country to adopt this one specific definition of anti-Semitism from the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance, or IHRA. The real firestorm was over the examples it included. Critics started saying, wait a minute, could this be used to shut down legitimate criticism of Israeli government policy by just labeling it anti-Semitic? It became a fight over the very definition of the term itself. And this quote from journalist Richard Sanders really just hits the nail on the head. According to this view, changing the definition of a word became an incredibly powerful political weapon. It was used to completely undermine a political leader whose entire career was built on fighting racism. It just goes to show you that controlling the story can be every bit as effective as any military campaign. All right, for our final case study, we're going to look at the most traditional kind of power you can think of, military might. But we're going to see its surprising limits in the modern world by looking at a simulated war between the US and Iran. Right off the bat, you see this huge disconnect. On one hand, you have the political story, the claim of a quick, clean, total victory. But then you look at the official intelligence report that was actually sent to the US Congress, and it tells a totally different story. The reality was, Iran was still a very dangerous adversary. Now, the cost of this simulated war was just staggering. This chart shows that the U.S. burned through a massive chunk of its best missile defense interceptors. We're talking half of its THAAD and Patriot interceptors. And these aren't just any old bullets. These are the super advanced, high-tech systems you need to protect your allies in hotspots all around the world. So let this number sink in. 5 years. A 38-day conflict would set back American military readiness by a minimum of 5 years. That's how long it would take to build new ones, thanks to disastrously slow production lines. That is a massive hit to your ability to project power anywhere else on the globe. And this really highlights a critical vulnerability in the modern age. I mean, even if you have the most powerful military on Earth, dealing with a relatively simple threat like naval mines to secure a vital shipping lane, well, it's not quick and it's not easy. It shows you the real limits of overwhelming force when you're up against clever, asymmetric tactics. So what's the big takeaway here? From controlling ports to controlling definitions to facing the hard limits of firepower, it's pretty clear the old rules of power are being totally rewritten. Winning today isn't just about having the biggest army anymore. It's about who controls the energy, who shapes the story, and who really understands the true cost of getting into a fight. The new rules of power? Well, they demand a much smarter game.